People who go no contact with their parents always get the, oh, but they're your parents argument. But I think we need to ask, what did the parents do to make that person cut off all ties with their family?
So I'm no contact with my family, and the reason that I chose to go no contact with my family is because I'm the scapegoat in a narcissist family system. If you know, you know. If you don't, I guess Google. But when I first went no contact with my parents, I was still talking to my sibling. And I noticed after a while of me being no contact that the way that my siblings were describing my narcissist parent slowly started to change.
As a child, you instinctively crave love from your parents. So if you've gotten to the point where you're even considering cutting your parents off, you've already checked out emotionally.
You know the saying, good fences make good neighbors? My mother was the metaphorical neighbor who looked at every fence I put up, tore it down, burnt it, blew it up, cut a hole in it, or otherwise decided it was offensive to her existence and needed to be removed. Today we're going to be chatting about the many adult children who have decided to go no contact with their neglectful, abusive, and emotionally immature parents. So let's get into it. Hello everyone and welcome back to the This Bahamian Gal podcast. So happy to have you here with me. Thank you so much to all of my new listeners. Some of you have come over from the main channel on YouTube, so I really appreciate you. Please share this podcast with your friends and your family members so that they can find it as well. Thank you so much. For so many people, family is everything. I know it is for me. I don't know about you guys, but family is such an important foundation. It's a unit that we reach out to anytime we're going through difficult times in our lives, whether it's at work or it's in our personal relationships with friends or a lover or a husband, a wife. We reach out to family. It feels good to be able to pick up the phone and call our parents. But for so many people, and of course, many of you who are watching this video today, it's not so easy to do that. There are a lot of people out there with very strained relationships with their parents. And as a result, I see a lot of adults going no contact with their mothers and their fathers. But why is that? Why do we have so many adults having zero contact with their parents today? We're going to be talking about that today. So before I get started, let me introduce myself because I realize I don't really introduce myself in my videos anymore. I guess I just assume that people know who I am. My name is Rogan. This is This Bahamian Gal. On my platform, I do social commentary and reaction videos, and I encourage my audience to have private conversations in public. So this is one of those private conversations that I want us to have in public because I've just been noticing this overabundance, it seems, of adults. Because we usually hear about like Gen Z. We usually hear about like a younger generation coming out and saying that they are having zero to do with their parents anymore. And they cite a number of reasons from toxicity to emotional, mental, physical abuse, or neglect. They don't want anything to do with their parents. So this is not an easy decision for a lot of people. If you listen to interviews with people who have been emotionally abused or neglected by their family members, it's often a very, very difficult decision and one that they don't take lightly and one that doesn't come overnight. It's usually after years of neglect or years of emotional abuse that they come to this conclusion that, you know what, I'm just better off far, far, far away from my family, particularly a parent.
So I'm no contact with my family, and the reason that I chose to go no contact with my family is because I'm the scapegoat in a narcissist family system. If you know, you know. If you don't, I guess Google. But when I first went no contact with my parents, I was still talking to my sibling. And I noticed after a while of me being no contact that the way that my siblings were describing my narcissist parent slowly started to change. All of a sudden, they saw him the way I saw him. They were telling me how bad he was and how awful things had gotten in the house. And based on the stories, it was bad. Well, today I learned something that made all of that make sense. Turns out that when you're the scapegoat, the narcissist uses you to keep it all together. You are how they emotionally regulate themselves. By concentrating their negativity on you, it doesn't go flying everywhere and other people can't see it, just you. Which means when you leave, there's no one there to absorb that negativity. And the narc has to find a new scapegoat.
One of the things that I often hear is that you have parents who, and it's usually one parent in particular. It's for me, I don't usually hear people saying both my parents. It's usually just one parent in particular who just has this unhealthy obsession with overstepping their boundaries. And that usually comes in the form of that parent giving unsolicited advice that that child did not ask for. And so let's just say you're at the dinner table, you know, it's your mother's or your father's birthday, and you're sitting at a dinner table with them, and they start weighing in on your personal life or your career choices, or, you know, who you're dating. They don't like them, and they have zero interaction with you. They've never been really positive towards you, but yet they chime in on what's going on in your life. And it seems like for a lot of adult children, no matter how many times they try to kind of like skirt the issue or just avoid the topic altogether, it's always that gnawing and always going back to that same issue. It's like the parent won't drop it. So a lot of them have just decided to part ways because they realize that nothing is going to change. No amount of counseling or talking to their parents is going to make them change.
People who go no contact with their parents always get the, oh, but they're your parents argument. But I think we need to ask, what did the parents do to make that person cut off all ties with their family? People don't wake up one day and suddenly decide to cut off their parents because they're bored. It was most likely constant abuse and neglect that repeated and piled up over the years. And in these situations, there are two options. Option number one, continue being an emotional and or physical punching bag for your abusers. Or option number two, leave. Parents who don't get cut off from their children's lives don't abuse their kids. It's pretty simple.
I've heard so many people say that they resent their parents because they feel very suffocated by them, or they feel like as if they don't understand them, or when they start to open up to their parents, it's met with resistance or it's met with dismissiveness. The parent won't understand, or either deliberately trying not to understand, or they just don't have the capacity to understand where that child is coming from. A lot of these parents who are passing on these negative traits to their children, they themselves were abused, either physically, mentally, emotionally, or neglected. And now, because they didn't course correct, they didn't fix the situation through therapy, through confronting their parents, they are passing on those same qualities to their kids. They're traumatizing their kids. And the kids, these adult kids, if they don't course correct, they're going to pass that on to their children. It's just going to be generational. So for a lot of these adult children, unfortunately, they're caught up in a cycle of dysfunction. And the thing is, breaking that cycle of dysfunction is very difficult for a lot of people. You see them, you know, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, some people even in their 80s, and they've not dealt with that trauma, and it manifests in any relationship that they have. I've noticed, and I have a friend who has their trauma from their parents, and they actually told me to buy a book so that I could have a greater understanding of what they're going through. And I did buy that book, and it's one of those books that a lot of people have been talking about, and I would definitely advise anyone who is dealing with this to get this book. And I'm sure many of you have heard this. It's called The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents: How to Heal from Distant, Rejecting, or Self-Involved Parents. I'm very fortunate that, you know, I grew up in a single parent household. Both of my parents, of course, were in my life, but of course there was a primary caregiver with my mother. And I'm so grateful for her because she gave us a lot of love and was very, very present, as much as she could be. And I appreciate that. And so when I hear like my friends talk about their difficulties with their parents, it's not that I don't want to relate. It's just certain things I just can't relate to because I didn't go through it myself. I can feel sorry for them. I can, you know, sit and listen to them. But at some point, because I wasn't exposed to it and I didn't have to deal with it head on, it's hard to understand exactly where they're coming from. You know what I mean? So it's like you're a spectator in their lives. You're sitting back, watching them, listening to them talk about what they've been through with their parents. And you feel sorry for them, but you just don't understand because it just wasn't your experience. And so that's why I bought this book, just so I could have a greater understanding. And I bought this last year, and I said I wanted to do a video on this because I think this is like something that a lot of people are going through. And I know because I'm seeing so many people cropping up on social media talking about just going no contact with their parents. And it's a very sad thing. So what does going no contact with your parents mean? Does it mean just like not answering them when they call? What is that? So let me just read this right now, what going no contact with your parents means. Well, it means deliberately cutting off all communication, and interaction with one's parents, essentially choosing to completely estrange oneself from them. That's a strong word, estrange. Usually due to a history of harmful behavior, abuse, or significant emotional distress caused by the parent-child relationship. And, I'm usually one of those people who advocates for people to, strengthen their family. But I do know that there is a cutoff point, because if you're involved with a parent who is showing absolutely no interest in bettering themselves or getting to understand you or apologizing for the things that they may have done, that can be pretty traumatizing. And what's worse than traumatizing someone? Hearing the person who traumatized you just not give a damn, gaslighting you into making you feel as if you're like, you need to just kind of get over it. And I'm somebody who, I love family. Okay, especially my immediate family. Like, I love being able to pick up the phone and call my mother and talk to her, or even when we're angry, at least I could send a quick text or something like that. And for a lot of people, that's just not, they don't get any sort of comfort from their parent. They don't get any love. They don't get any love. A lot of parents don't even tell their kids that they love them, adult children. And when you have these adult children who try to express themselves and say, listen, this hurts me, or what you did, I didn't like. It's almost like, just get over it. Get over it. Like, what are you still making noise about? Just get over it. And then that causes more damage. So I think in those instances where you are dealing with a parent who really just shows that they don't care about your feelings, and that's who they are, then I think you do have to leave them to their devices and say, you know what, if that's who you're going to be, I'm going to love you from a distance, and I mean from a distance. I'm not going to continue to subject myself to this, because then I'm not going to heal, right? You're not going to heal if you keep putting yourself back in that situation because you so want family. In those instances, you're going to have to start to maybe make your own family, create your own family, whether through having your own spouse and children, and you can have healthier relationships there, or by having friendships that turn into family. Because you have a lot of people who are family, but then they're relatives, they're not family. And you have people who aren't even relatives, but they're family. Do you understand what I'm saying? Friends who you have from work or high school or college, or someone who you met in a club can be so close to you and so loving and so tender towards you. You might have to get surrogate parents, You might have a best friend whose mother has always been really nice to you, or aunt who's been really nice to you. Then you have to lean on those people to kind of give you what you need. And it's really not an easy decision for a lot of people, especially when you're talking about marking milestones in your life or celebrating holidays. That's very tough to go through Christmas and Thanksgiving or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate, and not have your family to talk to. But I find like a lot of people might be sitting at home alone and pining for their family members. But then when they go back into those spaces, let's just say they say, you know what, this is crazy. It's Christmas. I'm going to go and sit with my father or my mother. I don't care. This is my family. This is the only family I have. And then they go. They're instantly reminded as to why they stay away. Because here comes the gaslighting. Here comes the dismissiveness. Right? And so who wants to be dealing with that constantly in their lives? If you're going to grow, if you're going to heal, you're going to have to make that step away. And this isn't what I'm saying. This is what, I'm saying it, but this is what the experts have said. Many experts have said, listen, you just kind of have to separate. If they're not willing to step up and be the parent that you need them to be, if they're not willing to listen to you, if they're not willing to understand where you're coming from, if they're not willing to atone for what they've done, then why am I sticking around? For the abuse?
Watch a video together and then chat about it.
When I feel like I was a good mom and did everything I can to show my kids I loved them and be there for them. And why does this generation of kids just turn their back on their parents? Like, I would never treat my parents the way some of the things have been said to me from my kids. And I don't understand it. And it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. My friends, patients that I see at work, story after story after story after, my daughter doesn't talk to me, my son doesn't talk to me. Like, just so much entitlement these days, and it's just so flippin' heartbreaking. Like, it was so much easier when the kids were little. Like, I just didn't think that my life would be where it's at 50. I love my kids, but why is it this hard? Why, where's the respect at for parents and appreciation for all they've done for you your entire life? Like, I don't get it.
The concept of no contact has been going around a lot lately, and so I want to answer this question genuinely as a therapist who sees a lot of clients who have got no contact. I think one of the largest things to recognize as a parent of an adult child is generational differences. So for starters, people who are in their 50s, 60s plus who have adult children grew up in a generation where it was very common for children to be seen, not heard, and respect equated to just acquiescing to whatever your parents kind of wanted. Respect often meant you didn't have boundaries, whereas mental health now is and continues to be a large conversation. Relationships with family members are one of the only relationships in which people are encouraged to make amends with people who have been abusive towards them, who have manipulated them, who consistently cross their boundaries, etc. And as a therapist, what I often hear in these situations is that from the child's perspective, there's been multiple attempts to repair the relationship, to explain the behaviors that are hurtful and harmful, yet the behaviors continue. Or there just isn't the safety or the space to have that discussion in the first place. Another thing is that in terms of gratitude for the parent taking care of them or just, creating them, I think that is often seen to be synonymous with I will have a relationship with you forever. Someone can be grateful for their life, for their parents, for the efforts that have been made, but also decide that a relationship is not for them. And that isn't to take away from the fact that I imagine that it's very hurtful for parents. And at the same time, what also exists is that it's hurtful typically for the child to go no contact as well. But while it's typically hurtful for the child to make that decision, it's also often safer from their perspective to make that decision. I think it's important to come to these conversations with the sense that you are not entitled to a relationship with your child just because you birthed them. It is something that you have to earn and continuously work at. And that goes both ways.
I couldn't agree more. Like I said, your friends, from high school, college, your church group can be your family. And you'd be surprised how your life changes when you're exposed to healthy relationships. You will, I think a lot of people will kick themselves like to say, why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I do this? And again, I'm not advocating for people to just drop their families. But if you keep talking to your family about the hurt that they've inflicted, mommy, I'm telling you that you keep doing this, and they're like, whatever. Why would you stick around for that? Take it away from a parental relationship. Let's just say it were a boyfriend-girlfriend situation or a husband-wife situation. And you're telling your spouse, you keep hurting me and it's traumatizing me. All these things that you're doing, they're hurting me. And he's just like, get over it. And he says, get over it. What would you whining about? At some point, you're going to say, this is not a healthy relationship for me. I need to get out of here.
You're thinking of going no contact with your parents, and the only thing stopping you is the thought of guilt for hurting their feelings. I've got a few things to tell you. Number one, as a child, you instinctively crave love from your parents. So if you've gotten to the point where you're even considering cutting your parents off, you've already checked out emotionally. Number two, you think you'll feel guilty because as a child, they always made you feel guilty for things that you didn't have to feel guilty about. Number three, if you're scared of hurting your parents' feelings, did they ever care about yours? Just saying.
Like I said, this book was a very, very good read. I'm not affiliated in any way with Lindsay Gibson, who wrote this book, but it's a very popular book for a reason. I want to read two things here. And I mean, there's so many wonderful nuggets of wisdom in this book. One of the headlines says, or the heading says, they are self-referential, not self-reflective. That is something I hear a lot from my friends. So let me just read this really quickly. It says, emotionally immature people are highly self-referential, meaning that in any interaction, all roads lead back to them. However, they aren't self-reflective. Their focus on themselves isn't about gaining insight or self-understanding. It's about being the center of attention. As you talk to them, self-referential people will turn whatever you say back to one of their own experiences. An example would be a mother listening to her daughter describe a relationship crisis and using it as a springboard to talk about her own divorce. We've seen that before, right? Where you've come to your parent with your own crisis, and rather than letting you be the focus, letting you be the center of attention, it's like, oh yeah, that reminds me of when I went through. Excuse me, we're talking about me. Back to me. And it doesn't just happen one time, it's constant. So at some point you're like, what? And listen, I've had friends like that. That's why I say, this don't have to be just for the parents. This could be for, friendships. I don't have those friends anymore. Where are they? Check the curb. That's why I kicked them. Another example would be parents who upstage their child's victory with recollections of their own accomplishments. Does that sound familiar? I hear that all the time. Those who are more socially skilled might listen more politely, but you still won't hold their interest. They may not overtly change the subject, but they won't ask follow-up questions or express curiosity about the details of your experience. Can you imagine you say, oh, Daddy, I just won some major award. And it's like, oh, okay, nice. You don't know what the award for? You don't know how many people I beat out? There's just no interest? And then you press on and you say, yeah, well, the award was for, that reminds me of when I was, in my 20s and I won this award. How we get talking about you? We were talking about me. That happens a lot. So the book says, they're more likely to bring the conversation to a close with a pleasant comment that effectively ends it, such as, that's wonderful, dear. I know you had a good time. My goodness. Because they lack self-reflection, emotionally immature people don't consider their role in a problem. They don't assess their behavior or question their motives. If they caused a problem, they dismiss it by saying they didn't intend to hurt you. After all, you can't blame them for something they didn't mean to do, right? In this way, their egocentric focus remains on their intention, not the impact on you. This book was so damn good. I'm not going to lie. And what I love about it too is that we hear people's stories. So not only do we hear what's going on or what to look out for, the signs to look out for, but you literally hear, and I would imagine that they've changed the names of these individuals, but you will actually hear real stories from patients who have come for therapy and talking about what they went through. It's very heartbreaking, actually. When you read what they had to say, it's like, man, I would have hated growing up in a house like that. Before I go, I want to read some Reddit comments because I tell you, people all over talking about this stuff. Now, I don't know if these ones are teenagers or adults because they're Reddit comments. But let me just start here. This one is from Green Mountain 85. Well, if they're born in 85, they're an adult. It says, my mother was every type of abusive towards me, and it ramped up in my adult years. She saw me as a vessel to meet her needs, taking her errand running, being an emotional garbage can for her endless venting. I could go on and on. Emotional garbage can. I love that phrase. It's very well stated. She didn't love me for me. She loved me for what I could do for her. And if I didn't do exactly as she expected, she became verbally and sometimes physically abusive towards me and would threaten me. I didn't continue my relationship with her out of love, more so out of obligation. I'm an only child and fear. More so out of obligation and fear. And then they were saying I'm an only child. I was so afraid of what she'd do to me if I didn't comply with her demands. She had threatened to have my children taken away, threatened to hurt herself and say I did it. OMG. I have a friend whose mother does that. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I just had a flashback to one of my friends who, I didn't read this all the way. I just screenshot it. And so now a lot of this is just new to me. Anyways, one day about 7 years ago, she threatened me with elder abuse because I couldn't take her to Walmart at 9 p.m. for a phone charger. Something in me in that moment was just done, and I knew it was forever. I blocked her number and didn't speak to her for several years. It was the best decision I've ever made. We exchange a happy birthday, Merry Christmas text twice a year now. I'm so thankful that I chose to end the madness of my relationship with her. That's so unfortunate. And I just feel like unfortunate isn't even strong enough a word. This other person says, identifies as Munchkin mother. My mother was horrendously abusive and had started recreating that pattern with my children. I was in a church, this is me saying this now. I was in a church group many, many years ago. And I remember a woman talking about that, like how her father was very abusive towards her, emotionally he was just trash. The things that she said, I just was like sitting there like, boy, I would have punched that man square in his face. I swear, the things that she shared. And she said she was frightened of her father, and so she just dealt with it. All her life, she just dealt with it. And she said she just carried that trauma into her adult life. And she said she only went flip mode squad. You know, when you flip out on someone. When he started to do those same things to her son. That's when she lost it. So that's what this reminds me of. It got harder and harder to maintain any kind of contact the healthier I got. And the more I was able to set and enforce boundaries. You know the saying, good fences make good neighbors? My mother was the metaphorical neighbor who looked at every fence I put up, tore it down, burnt it, blew it up, cut a hole in it, or otherwise decided it was offensive to her existence and needed to be removed. Ciao. Eventually I said, okay, enough. I don't want to do this anymore. Before blocking her, she continued leaving me abusive voicemails for 5 years afterward. Look here, I found the book, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, to be very helpful. Another good one was, Will I Ever Be Good Enough? Healing the Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. Not saying anything specific about your mother, but it really helped me identify the dysfunction in our relationship and the effects of it. I remember reading both and saying, oh my God, I'm not crazy. A lot of people out there, baby. Last one I'm going to read here, and then I'm going to end this video. And I hope you all are enjoying this video. If you are, please hit the like button and drop a comment down below, because these are the conversations I love having, and I haven't had these types of conversations on my platform in a while. Got a little sidetracked there for a minute. This one is Mirror Herb. I just thought Herb. Mirror Herb. I went no contact with both of my parents because they were both manipulative and self-involved at their best and highly abusive at their worst. They both also had difficult childhoods and in turn made my childhood horrendous. And I have had what sounds like a similar trajectory to yours. The healthier I got, the less possible having relationships with them became. Yeah, because once you've already separated and you start to see sorry if you hear a train, I have a train going by. But the healthier you get in your own life, it's like you don't have that tolerance level for that crap anymore. And it's like foreign to you. But as long as you stay unhealthy mentally and emotionally, it's gonna be like a life raft. You know, you're gonna cling to that in some way, hoping that at some point they're going to change. They rarely do. As for how I ended contact, I moved halfway across the country for reasons unrelated to getting away from my parents. That was just a bonus. And then sometime after that, I changed my phone number, blocked my entire family minus my sister on social media, and went ghost. It has been outstanding, I have to say. Cutting out the worst parts of my past has been immensely healing for me. Oh, okay. I know I said that was the last one I was going to read, but I want to read this last one. I'm sorry. It's very short. This one, I didn't screenshot the name. I'm sorry. It says, I've been no contact for 15 years. We went our separate ways when I was 21. I had a therapist tell me about no contact because I didn't realize it was an option. The straw that broke the camel's back was just another one of her crazy manipulations. But of course, this was after a lifetime of her abuse. There's a grieving period, of course. And even at 36, I still wish I could call my mom and ask her a question or for help with something. But I don't mean my mom. I mean the mom that I wish I had. I think. IDK. I don't know. The level of peace of that comes after the storm was worth it for me. The level of peace that comes after the storm was worth it for me. Yeah. It's crazy. And I understood exactly what this person meant when they said, I wish I could call my mom, and not the person who really is my mother. But, you know, for those of us out here who are so privileged to be able to just pick up the phone and ask our parents for advice and know that they love us and they care about us and they're going to give us the most sound advice because they do love us and care about us, and it's not about them, it's about you. We are so privileged, so blessed, so fortunate. A lot of people do not have that. A lot of adults don't have it. And I would sincerely advise people to, especially like if you're, because I want to say something to like if a Black person is watching this, because this is something I hear a lot in the Black community, like we don't go to therapy. I'm glad so many Black people are breaking out of that. We do need to go to therapy. A lot of us should be in therapy. A lot of us who are walking around not in therapy should be in therapy. I have been around people who look like me who say therapy. We don't go to no therapy. Why not? I have zero issues in going to therapy if I need to, and I would sincerely advise people to do that. And now I know that therapy is not, it's not cheap for a lot of folks. I know some insurance companies, if you have insurance, because I don't like to assume that everybody has insurance, but you look into programs to see if there are free therapy sessions somewhere that you can go to, because I would hate for you not to be able to get the help you need because of money, because of the finances, but definitely get that therapy. I would say go to, if you're in church and if you have a kind of church where you feel like you trust your pastor or you trust the people who are there to pray with you and to talk to you and to love you, who care about you and kind of guide you in a good biblical way, then do that as well. And find yourself a good friend, who can really just try to, as much as they can, help you and relate to you. They might not understand every single thing about you in that moment, because if they didn't go through that, it's hard, but they can still love you. And I would also say this too, and I would say this to my friends who've been through this, is to be willing to understand that people do love you and value you and need you and want you around. Because what I've witnessed is sometimes people have been so emotionally neglected and abused that it's almost like they don't believe you when you say you love them. They don't believe you when you say you care. It's like, I don't know why. And again, because I'm not in it. But understand that there are people who do care about you and love you and want the best for you, only the best. And I'm sure you have friends who are protective over you, so be willing to understand that, work on your healing, and know that people love you and value you. And I'm happy that, sometimes Reddit is a messy board, depending on what they're talking about. But I love that it's here for people to just sound off and to find community and share their own experiences, because I think a lot of people just want to know, hey, I see other people are going through this. I'm not crazy. Because sometimes those parents will gaslight you. The mother or the father might gaslight you into making you think that you're losing it. But it's good to see other people are going through it too. Not because you want them to suffer, but because you just want to know that you're not alone. Thanks for listening to the This Bahamian Gal podcast. Don't forget to rate the show and leave us a review. And be sure to follow me on YouTube and Instagram at This Bahamian Gal. Also, we want to hear what you have to say. So weigh in on the conversation by emailing us at beourguest@thisbahamiangal.com. That's beourguest@thisbahamiangal.com, or by going to our blog, thisbahamiangal.com, and leaving us a voice message. Yes, if you're on desktop, you'll see the leave a voicemail button on the right of the screen. If you're on your smartphone, which I'm sure a lot of you are, you'll see it at the bottom of the screen. We cannot wait to hear what you have to say. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Love me.